Hi there, I'm Nancy Gothard, Policy Planner with the City of Courtenay. On behalf of the City of Courtenay, Mayor, Council, and staff, I thank you for your interest in the City of Courtenay's Official Community Plan, or OCP. I hope you find the presentation informative and that you feel motivated to share what you think of the proposed vision for Courtenay and draft plan after hearing this presentation and possibly learning more and talking to your friends and family. We certainly appreciate any effort to get the word out. You can learn more about the OCP, including accessing the full draft plan, summary documents, and background studies at the website listed here, courtenay.ca/OCP update. The online survey runs until March 8th, and the dates for a number of virtual town halls are also listed there that will occur between February 9th and 17th. Staff are also always available to take your calls or emails and discuss ideas with you. So in this presentation, I will cover the following topics. What is an OCP and why is it important? The steps taken to create this OCP, Courtenay at a glance, which is some key demographic information, what's important to us, what we learned through the consultation on community values and goals, policy foundations of quality of life and low carbon footprint, growth management, land uses, community planning policy theme highlights. So those would be in topics such as transportation, parks, affordable housing, natural environment, implementation, and next steps. The City of Courtenay respectfully acknowledges that the lands to which this OCP apply are on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. So why do we make land acknowledgements? Because acknowledging human relationships to place is an ancient Indigenous practice that continues today. In the spirit of reconciliation, the City of Courtenay makes this land acknowledgement to raise awareness of ongoing Indigenous presence and land rights in the territory that includes and encompasses Courtenay. It invites us, a settler government, the City of Courtenay, to reflect on how we might be perpetuating colonial processes that are ongoing and from which we have benefited, as well as the changes we will make to honor the Indigenous peoples and their lands that we inhabit. So what is an OCP? OCPs are common in BC, but they are not required. However, if a community wishes to have a zoning bylaw, it must first have an OCP. They are visionary, public, and community policy planning documents. They get adopted as a bylaw by mayor and council. They inform municipal spending, services, and capital projects, and provide policies to evaluate new development applications. The diagram on the right reflects how the Local Government Act in BC provides authority for local governments to create OCPs and the regulatory instruments to implement them. It shows how communities that have regional growth strategies, which the Comox Valley does, are to be consistent with said regional growth strategy, and how all other plans, regulations, and decisions are to be consistent with the official community plan. The Local Government Act does not require that everything in the OCP be implemented, but it does require that everything the city does implement be consistent with the OCP. In short, official community plans are high level and long range, and they provide clarity for how the City of Courtenay will make decisions on included topics when working on topics within its scope. OCPs are documents, and ours is about 250 pages, which is a pretty standard length for official community plans. They're often used primarily by local governments, developers, community organizations, businesses, and the already engaged citizens. And these are expected to be the primary audiences of Courtenay's OCP. However, the community planning ideas and policies that are contained within them go on to affect the qualities of our communities that make them functional, unique, and delightful. They affect aspects of our communities such as our gathering spaces, community character, protection of lands, the downtown, neighborhood centers, and the mix of businesses and activities and vitality that occur within them. They impact the transportation choices and ultimately our pocketbooks, both through taxes and user fees, as well as our own personal finances, such as through the housing and transportation choices and affordability that are available in our community. In order to plan for the future, we have to know who we are planning for and how demographics are expected to change. As of the last census, 2016, there are about 26,000 people in Courtenay, and the estimated population in 2020 is closer to 27,000. There's a 1% projected growth rate in the next 10 years and a slightly lower one after that. This would result in an estimated 31,000 people in Courtenay projected in 2031, almost 32,000 in 2041, and getting up to almost 33,000 in 2051. I will say, though, that the projections get a little more harder to project the longer the timeline. Now, we're expecting approximately 4,500 more people in Courtenay by 2031. And there are some additional characteristics in Courtenay's population that are listed on the right as of the 2016 census. Now, Statistics Canada is set to release their 2021 census data starting in February of this year. And we will be very interested to see how accurate the growth predictions have been between 2016 and 2021 censuses. So people often ask, what if the population projections are not correct? What if we are growing faster than we think? If that is the case, then the city would likely update the OCP sooner than the 2030 timeline, which is the planning horizon for this particular plan. Here's a slide that just shows some of our housing characteristics or household characteristics. There's about 11,700 households as of 2016. About 30% of those households are renters. Our household size is about 2.1 people per household, and that has been shrinking over time. And there's been an increase of almost 30% of families without children between 2006 and 2016. And in the renter household composition, the dominant composition is single individuals. Here's a snapshot of the OCP review process timeline. The OCP update started in winter of 2019 and has been steadily being, the document's been steadily being developed over the past 2 years. Of course, the pandemic has affected the timeline and sequencing, particularly of public engagement events, but overall we have been able to conduct all the phases of the project that we intended to, from modeling to research and public and stakeholder engagement. And the City of Courtenay also engaged specifically and separately with Comox First Nation at Council's direction, and the particular engagement milestones are shown in the orange stars and line here. This slide is just to plug our OCP web page available that includes all the background information on how we got to where we are now, as well as the draft plan, summary plan, and any other supporting documents. So everybody's encouraged to explore that web page. There's even some short films that we hope are educational and entertaining on urban issues. We hope that you'll share this information with your friends and family and neighbors as well. This slide is showing that the start of the process, that a public engagement plan had been created in which we identified the various consultation methods that we intended to use. And we were actually able to, like I said, do most of them, and where we couldn't do ones in person, we pivoted to online. So what we actually did in terms of consultation is listed here. So firstly, we established a technical advisory committee in the fall 2019, 15 members on that, representing a variety of technical topics within our community, such as business development, the development sector, the environmental sector, social planning, housing, youth representation, seniors representation, and those types of interests, arts and culture. I'm sure I'm missing a few. And these people provided feedback on the process, the OCP, the policy development from the beginning until the stage that we're at now. We held an ideas fair in February 2020, in which a big open house in which many people were able to attend. And then our consultation shifted to more online survey, asking people about whether the vision and goals and growth concept feedback that we heard at the Ideas Fair, whether people, if more people supported that. So we did some survey testing on that question. Which yes, the answer was most people, there's strong support for the vision, goals, and growth concept that I'll go over shortly. We held some stakeholder brainstorming sessions in the summer of 2020. We held 8 different thematic topics, 50 organizations were represented. Fortunately, in later 2020, the public health orders did allow that we could do some in-person gathering outdoors in small groups. And so we did that. We walked around a number of neighborhoods, 9 neighborhoods we walked around, and 11 neighborhoods we held virtual neighborhood meetings on. So there's actually 20 meetings there that we held at that time to talk about more specific neighborhood issues. And then we held between winter 2020 all the way through to summer 2021, more detailed stakeholder engagement virtual workshops in which we shared emerging policy concepts and talked to the wider stakeholders in our community. And now we're at the public review stage, and we certainly hope that you'll share your views. Here's a picture of the technical advisory committee that I had mentioned. Here's a picture from the Ideas Fair back when we were able to meet, and we had a lot of positive feedback from that event, and hopefully when we're able to gather again, we can do more of that because the community seemed to really appreciate the ability to engage in a creative way on a variety of topics for Courtenay's growth. This is an example of the survey platform MetroQuest that we used. An attempt was made to make it visual and engaging and gamified to some degree to hopefully engage people to hear what they were thinking. Just a picture of a Zoom meeting, one of many that we held in the stakeholder sessions. This map shows the neighborhoods that we focused the workshops on, a lot of areas of targeted growth. So that was one reason for selecting the neighborhoods. And then, of course, like I said, we did virtual neighborhood meetings as well, where people could actually submit virtual sticky notes and look at photos and vote on photos and rate photos of urban design so that we could get a sense of what people think is the right look for growth in our community. More of those stakeholder meetings. And what we heard across all of these engagement methods is presented here. We heard that reconciliation is very important in our community, that social equity is very important, that a wide range of housing choices are needed, that land use planning should promote compact growth. We often heard people say, let's try to go up a little more rather than always out. Natural assets are widely cherished, can provide services, must be protected and restored. This is a reason a lot of people say that they move to Courtenay and why they stay here, and why they love living here. We heard that transportation planning and urban form should focus more on people walking, cycling, and transit. And certainly the City of Courtenay has made more advancements in those areas in recent years, but people said, let's do even more of that. We learned that people, places, gathering spaces, and a sense of community are very important. They're very important more than ever in a time of a pandemic where people are looking for ways to engage and stay in touch with each other. We learned that tackling climate change involves many concurrent strategies and also delivers on many co-benefits, that often that there can be financial savings, there can be health benefits of a cleaner environment. We learned that integrated approaches are needed to be effective in community actions on a variety of topics. A lot of people asked for more regional coordination, for more partnership development. We're only, not even 70,000 people in the whole valley, so let's work together on these topics is what we heard a lot of people say. And that there's a strong desire for ongoing community dialogue and stakeholder collaboration. Now, the OCP is directed by 4 cardinal directions, and I'll just go over them each here. So the first being reconciliation. The city commits, and this means that the city commits to incorporating Indigenous perspectives into its work and decision-making process, and to providing equitable and inclusive services that benefit Indigenous peoples. The city will seek guidance from Indigenous partners in how to make this commitment a reality. Another direction is climate action. It means that Courtenay is responding to this call for action. The city has committed to achieving a 45% reduction in community-wide greenhouse gas emissions from 2016 levels by 2030 and a net zero emissions target by 2050. This OCP includes strategies, actions, and measures to reduce emissions to target levels while saving on energy costs and improving quality of life for Courtenay residents. Community well-being. This OCP accounts for the diverse and complex ways in which the urban environment impacts well-being. It takes a systems-based approach to well-being, considering the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of individuals and communities and the ecosystems of which we are all a part. This OCP challenge, and then finally equity, this OCP challenges some traditional planning practices that can result in policies, programs, and regulations that disproportionately impact and stymie the progress of some equity priority groups. Through policies on topics ranging from affordable housing to public participation, this OCP applies an equity lens and seeks to honor the lived experiences of all of Courtenay's peoples. So a compass has been used as the visual identity for the OCP development process, as it serves as a tool to navigate through change. The OCP does. The OCP is that tool to help us navigate change. It helps to orient us to where we stand today and provides direction to where we want to be moving. Now, the goals provide markers as the community moves towards its vision. And I'll just read the goals here: investing in relationships, economic success that emerges from community values in place, love for local places, housing choices for all, functional transportation choices, land is valued as a precious resource, more space and time in nature, strong neighborhoods, and a city for everyone. And these goals emerge directly from the public consultation. And then the ultimate vision is being a Courtenay that is responsible for the future, supporting high quality of life with a low carbon footprint for all. And there's actually a more extensive vision statement in the document of the OCP. Two policy foundations are woven through the OCP as they served as technical foundations of policy proposals. So they are quality of life and low carbon pathways. In other words, they are used as measures against which to ensure the policy proposals deliver on multiple outcomes and the ultimate vision. Quality of life is influenced by a broad range of personal, social, economic, and environmental conditions in which we grow, live, work, and age. It is defined as the standard of health, comfort, and happiness experienced by an individual or group. To understand the policies that Courtenay can enact to support high quality of life for everyone, the social determinants of health framework is presented in the OCP and shown here. Social determinants of health are the non-medical factors that influence individual and collective health outcomes, such as education, income, and social status, housing, and accessibility, etc. The OCP has direct and indirect influence on a number of these factors. For example, the OCP directs policy on Courtenay's mobility network to support active lifestyles, choice, and affordability. It supports the creation of sufficient and affordable housing. It includes land uses to support employment opportunities, public spaces to promote social connections, and policies to safeguard a healthy environment. But high quality of life must also be achieved with a shrinking and eventually eliminated carbon footprint by 2050. The first step to understand how to do this for Courtenay was to understand where Courtenay's greenhouse gas emissions stand today, with a focus on the elements that fall within the city's boundaries and jurisdiction. Courtenay's total community emissions in 2016, at the time of the last census, were around 93,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. These emissions resulted from energy use in buildings, transportation, infrastructure, solid waste, and wastewater decomposition. And those are the spheres of greenhouse gas emissions that that municipalities in general, City of Courtenay, have some influence over. The 5-year greenhouse gas reduction targets have been set with the ultimate target of a net zero by 2050, which is in line with the International Panel on Climate Change targets. And the modeling that we did, that there's a bit more detail on this in the OCP, but here's a graph. The modeling indicates that the actions related to transportation and buildings have the greatest impact on reducing emissions in our particular community. Now, there is an important caveat to this modeling that I must state. It includes the territorial community-wide greenhouse gas emissions generated in key community sectors, the ones I mentioned, transportation, buildings, industry, and waste. But that type of modeling is only part of the story, as it does not include the embodied energy of some quote unquote climate solutions, such as electric vehicles, or the emissions associated with wider consumption patterns beyond energy that occur within Courtenay's boundaries or as a result of activities of Courtenay citizens. Therefore, the approach to reducing and eliminating emissions in Courtenay is to first avoid or reduce energy demand as much as possible, to improve energy efficiency, and then as a third step, to switch energy supplies to low carbon sources. So examples of avoiding energy use include reducing the amount of waste that gets produced and replacing a single occupancy vehicle trip with carpooling, walking, cycling, or transit. Examples of improving energy efficiency include retrofitting existing buildings and replacing aging infrastructure so that both are more highly efficient. Examples of switching energy sources include switching building heating systems from natural gas to heat pumps, or replacing a conventional car with an electric vehicle. Now, the sequence of this approach is very important. By avoiding energy consumption, firstly, retrofitting requirements, and the need to generate renewable energy are both then reduced. So these systems-based approaches to understanding individual and community health, quality of life, and carbon footprint were used in developing the full suite of policies throughout the OCP to ensure that policy proposals deliver on multiple outcomes. One key area of policy is the growth management and land use, which is a core purpose of an OCP. Remember, you can't have a zoning bylaw in a community without first adopting an official community plan with land use designations. Now, the physical growth of a city impacts its success. And here we see Courtenay's boundary extension history that shows that physical growth has historically expanded faster than population growth. So between 1915 in the establishment of City of Courtenay and 1965, the boundaries roughly doubled in size. Between 1965 and now, they roughly tripled in size. And managing and physical expansion of a city has tremendous impact on a community. We know now that a more compact urban form in which growth is carefully managed and concentrated in existing urban areas can help a community meet goals that include active and public transportation choices, natural area protection, agricultural land protection, vibrant communities, and more efficient municipal service delivery. Municipal asset management and community planning best management practices both now strongly recommend focused growth for these social, economic, and environmental reasons. So to figure out where Courtenay's growth could occur to promote more focused growth, we conducted a range of spatial analyses that included things like proximity to existing services, the transit network, capacity for development or redevelopment of private lands, environmental constraints, and land economic analysis. And we did this to determine where the best locations are to focus growth for the approximately 4,500 more people expected in the next approximately 10 years. Now, as you can see, the focus of the growth management objectives in Courtenay is to restrict new development to within Courtenay's boundaries, firstly, and then to focus it within core areas through the following urban framework hierarchy. And I'll just go through the elements of that hierarchy. So firstly, primary growth locations. These are town centers and urban corridors, which in the map are shown as the downtown of Courtenay, Cliff Avenue corridor, some part of Lower Ryan Road area outside of the floodplain, the Upper Ryan Road and Lerwick area near the hospital, And then another hierarchy element is the secondary growth locations, neighborhood centers, and multi-residential. And I will explain these in more detail in upcoming slides. But the secondary growth locations are around the Lake Trail Community School, around the Tin Town area, along McPhee Avenue rail corridor between 5th and 17th. Some periphery lands, particularly around the Back Road, Dingwall Road, and Headquarters Road around the Lower Ryan Road area. And then a new neighborhood center planned for in the future at the intersection of Anderton and Ryan Road. And the modeling predicted that, or estimated that about 70% of the community, Courtenay's growth, could be accommodated in these two growth types of locations. And that the remaining growth could be accommodated in what we call the infill areas, which are predominantly single residential neighborhoods that we know today. There's also a category called areas of limited or no growth. And I will highlight that the OCP, this growth framework, is consistent with the Comox Valley Regional Growth Strategy directions, and that if you want to learn more about the Regional Growth Strategy, the link is provided there. Now, I'm going to go over 3 important land use concepts that are used to inform the growth concept and the land use designations that I'm going to describe in more detail. Firstly, land use mix, which refers to the diversity of land uses such as homes and shops, institutions within a given area. Mixing important destinations and jobs close to home allows residents to live, work, shop, play, and learn close to home. Mixing land uses also means mixing housing choices and housing types within a particular area, often so that people can stay in their community as their needs change over time. This OCP prioritizes a mix of use within growth centers and corridors and a diversity of housing choices and types throughout the city. Density refers to the number of people, homes, or jobs within a certain area. Higher residential densities, often in the form of multi-unit homes, can result in energy savings, lower per capita municipal infrastructure and servicing costs. So that infrastructure, again, is things like roads, water and sewer infrastructure, transit, fire stations, recreation centers, and parks. It can result in greater housing choices and affordability, more vibrant street life and public spaces, a greater proportion of trips being able to be taken by foot, bike, and transit, and as a result, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This OCP supports slight increases in densities throughout the entire city while prioritizing density in growth centers and growth corridors. And urban form and design. This refers to the physical structure and appearance of a city. It determines how open spaces, transportation networks, ecological systems, buildings, and humans all relate to each other in physical space. Urban form and design should also communicate a community's values, reflect its heritage and character, and make a space a place people want to be. This OCP supports high-quality urban form and design to ensure that mixed use, higher density centers throughout Courtenay are thoughtfully designed to complement and enhance the neighborhoods in which new developments will occur. Now I'm going to walk through the various land use designations with the assistance of some conceptual drawings. These are meant to provide some examples of what types of development would be supported in different areas of Courtenay. The downtown is a type of town center, which would allow a wide variety of mix of commercial and residential uses, up to 4 stories along 5th Street and Old Orchard area, and up to 8 stories in the other western and southern parts of the downtown. There are some annotations on these drawings that include smaller scale urban design features that are needed to support a low carbon future and what we could expect to see more of as our community develops and redevelops. I won't read them all, but some examples include more electric vehicle charging facilities, more tree canopy, opportunities for urban agriculture spread throughout the community, and things like solar panels. The other town centers and urban corridor, like I said, the Upper Ryan Road, Lower Ryan Road, and Cliff Avenue corridor, all also would support taller buildings up to 8 stories in a mix of uses. I will point out that the land use designations are different than zoning regulations. So I'm talking about land use designations right now. The OCP identifies general land uses, but it does not change the zoning. That means that a zoning bylaw change must also occur following the OCP adoption in order for a developer to actually have zoning permissions to build this type of development. The city is considering the role of pre-zoning key properties, which would then provide that zoning permission. However, there are advantages to requiring that a zoning amendment process be undertaken by a development applicant, such as the community then has the opportunity to provide additional feedback, and the city has more ability to negotiate community amenities as part of the rezoning approval. So the land use designations show the intended use in the future, but the zoning is what dictates what can occur today. I want to highlight that distinction between the OCP land use designations and the zoning bylaw, as the adoption of the OCP will not automatically change the zoning permissions. The neighborhood centers would permit a more limited mix of use, such as daily services in the form of cafes or small grocers or the hairdresser or childcare, as well as multi-residential buildings up to 4 stories in height. They would allow for more local commercial and community services needs to be met within walking distance of more residences. The 4 locations are around the Lake Trail area, Tin Town, McPhee Avenue corridor, and that new one eventually out by Ryan and Anderton Road. Urban residential land use designation covers the largest extent of the area in the city. Today, these areas are predominantly detached single residential homes, with areas of town that also permit duplexes, suites, or detached secondary dwellings such as carriage homes or garden suites. The proposed land use urban residential designation would permit up to 2 units on all single residential properties, which could take the form of a duplex, a secondary suite, or a detached secondary dwelling, if there's enough, if the lot dimensions or size allow for that. I will point out that this is a proposed change. The suites, at least, the inclusion of suites in these areas is a proposed change that would occur very shortly after the OCP begins the adoption process in the anticipated May or June timeline of this year. And it would take the form of a zoning bylaw change initiated by the city to permit more forms of this lower but increasing density housing throughout the city. And I will clarify that it's secondary suites that would be part of that zoning amendment, not the other secondary forms of housing, such as the duplexes or the detached secondary dwellings. This is sometimes referred to as gentle infill or accommodating more missing middle housing. I will note as well that this urban residential designation would also support residences up to 4 stories, subject to a separate rezoning application. So a key message with urban residential areas is the policy intent in the OCP is to support more infill throughout the existing neighborhoods in an incremental way. There are a few areas around the Lower Ryan Road town center that have been identified for multi-residential due to some larger lots in that area and also their close proximity to a town center. These areas would also require that a rezoning application be submitted, so there would be opportunity for more public input on the appropriate densities, setbacks, and character of the development. And here are some drawings of what is meant by multi-residential. Could take the form of ground-oriented, maybe smaller units clustered together, or it could include buildings up to 6 stories. There are other land uses designated in the OCP. One is the commercial, just strictly commercial, not mixed use with residential, a location up at the top of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Old Island Highway intersection, as well as the Lower Ryan Road area that is within the floodplain where residential uses are not appropriate. There are also institutional uses shown in blue. These include public buildings, schools, hospital, and churches. These are the same as today. The industrial is shown in purple. And these are mostly in the South Courtenay area. And industrial uses would be removed to some degree from the McPhee Rail Corridor where they are permitted today, although some light industrial uses mixed with commercial offices and residences would be permitted in that area, such as the kind of land use mix that we see in the Tin Town area. Parks and Recreation, shown in green, is the same as today, as is the Agricultural Land Reserve. And this small area of Headquarters Road would be designated agriculture, given it is in the floodplain and not suitable for development. But still, 2 housing units would be permitted on there. Future growth includes areas that's shown in the hatching where no new development would be encouraged, but that would likely be examined for development potential in the next OCP planning cycle. The OCP also contains some more specific information for particular areas of town. I won't spend time on the details here, but some of the areas where a little more detail is provided in the OCP are the neighborhood centers, just shown here on the left. The Park Precinct, shown on the right. This is an area identified for future local area planning, very popular area in the whole valley. The Harmston Avenue Precinct is also identified for local area planning in the next year. This area is near the downtown and would be the first area to receive more planning attention following the adoption of the OCP, as there is quite a bit of municipal land there and development opportunity, and that would support the vibrancy of the downtown, which is having more residences in the downtown area is a goal of also the 2016 downtown playbook, which also provides policy support for a lot of the ideas in the OCP. And also more detail on the floodplain area, which is subject to a floodplain management study that is currently being undertaken by the city. So we can expect more detail on planning for that area as well following the OCP adoption. Now I'm going to shift gears and talk about the specific aspects of the community, from reconciliation and community participation to transportation, housing, and the natural environment, and much more. The OCP contains more detailed information and policies for a number of these community topics. And this slide here reminds us that the city will have different roles to play in the implementation of these policies. So for example, some policies will inform new development or city infrastructure standards, or will direct a city regulation that affects development or infrastructure standards to be changed in the future. Some policies will direct how the city addresses a topic, such as incorporating a new perspective or process into existing city activities. An example would be continuing to ensure continuously that services are provided in a way that supports equity, diversity, and inclusion. Some policies indicate a city preference or a desire to work with others on topics that are outside of the city's control or traditional mandate. An example of this is working with a wide variety of partners to address homelessness and secure more permanently affordable housing. It's important to bear in mind that the OCP is a policy document that lays a foundation for how the city will make decisions on the topics that are within its scope. I will talk about OCP implementation priorities at the end of this presentation, but aside from identifying the best ways to start, the key actions that are recommended to start with, the OCP's role is primarily to provide clarity on how the city will review and provide strategies for community planning topics. It in and of itself does not set council priorities, but rather is a source of ideas and positions that the mayor and council of the day can use to set more focused priorities for staff work plans and municipal budgets. Now, I will give a warning that the following slides are much more text-oriented than the previous ones. I'm going to go over the objectives for each of the topics stated here, as we don't have time to go into the actual hundreds of policies across the topics. So what I mean by objectives is I'm going to talk about the desired end state for within all these topic areas. But if you want to see what specific actions the city is going to undertake or proposes to undertake to achieve those objectives, those are policies and those are listed in the OCP. My hope is that If you find something of particular interest, that you will go to the courtenay.ca/OCP update website to learn more and then participate in the public consultation. So hopefully the following slides are a bit of a teaser. On the topic of reconciliation, the city will create, promote, and implement a reconciliation framework in which concrete actions are identified in partnership and consultation. The city will support the federal and provincial government's intergovernmental initiatives in Canada's reconciliation process. The city will seek opportunities to establish engagement processes and implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. The city will incorporate Indigenous perspectives into municipal work and decision-making processes. We will ensure that there are ongoing respectful government-to-government relationships with Comox First Nation that nurtures trust and resiliency. The city will work to deepen relationships and partnerships with organizations that represent Métis and off-nation Indigenous residents. The city will collaborate with all regional partners and sectors of society wherever opportunities exist, and the city will strive for regionally consistent approaches to reconciliation. We will invest in ongoing learning opportunities between the city and all Indigenous partners and provide learning and capacity building opportunities for city employees to build better awareness, understanding, and accountability by following the principles of the Truth and Reconciliation of Canada's official mandate, as well as UNDRIP, United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples, on the rights of Indigenous peoples. The city will collaborate with and support Indigenous partners and service providers in the community in providing educational opportunities to the general public, and we will seek to support Comox First Nation economic development aspirations in accordance with the policies in the OCP. In terms of community participation, the city will strive for proactive community participatory approaches to encourage open dialogue and inclusive decision-making. We'll follow the International Association of Public Participation's best management practices. We'll apply appropriate engagement tools and techniques to provide a consistent approach to public engagement efforts across the wide range of community decisions that are proposed and made by the city. We will seek input from equity, priority, and underrepresented groups on how they would like to safely participate in engagement processes. We'll explore the use of a range of formal and informal citizen and stakeholder advisory bodies to help assist in council making decisions. And we'll assure that when those bodies exist, that they are proportionally representative of the community. We will work to support community development approaches in order to strengthen the participation and resilience of neighborhoods. And we will seek partnerships as strategies to achieve the OCP vision, goals, and policies. Moving on to more infrastructure types of topics and objectives, we will work to achieve 30% of trips by walking, cycling, and transit by 2030. And today that number is closer to 15%. The city will make stronger investments prioritizing walking, cycling, and transit in order to achieve those modal split targets. The city will support and create street standards that include attention to safety, accessibility, and comfort at the pedestrian scale so that walking and biking feels comfortable and something that people want to do, enjoyable and pleasant at that street scale. Existing road space would be repurposed to support public life and green infrastructure. So looking at roads not as only infrastructure to move vehicles, but that they also play a role in the social life of our communities as well. There's a lot of land in our communities dedicated to roads. So we're looking for more multiple benefits and uses that we can get out of that land. An objective is that zero emissions electrified transportation is supported and increasingly the norm, that the amount of land dedicated to parking is minimized. The parking standards reflect electric vehicle and cycling needs. These are strong emerging mobility sectors in our community. And that new development integrates multimodal transportation network planning right from the start, right into the site design, not as an afterthought. The city, as an objective, would support educational programs to ensure that transit use, walking, cycling, and car sharing are viable options for people. That opportunities for innovation in transportation would be explored. We know that the mobility landscape in cities is rapidly changing, so we need to keep our eye on that. And that the city shows corporate leadership in the city's fleet and on city properties. In terms of buildings and landscape, and I would encourage anyone who is considering doing some development, construction, people who work in that industry, that they read this chapter in detail. There is information on the city's intention of which steps in the BC Building Code, the Energy Step Code, we intend to adopt in which timelines. So I think that'll be a very strong interest to people who are doing development. So the objectives for this topic are municipal buildings and site design demonstrate high energy and water efficiency, net zero emissions, and energy production. That new private buildings are highly energy efficient and water efficient. They perform at a net zero emission standard and produce energy. An objective is that living landscape elements are incorporated for water and energy conservation purposes. That means the landscapes, the trees around them, the rain gardens, pervious surfaces, that all those things can be integrated into a landscape design to achieve energy and water conservation goals. That the design of new buildings integrate with neighborhood character, that they showcase Indigenous designs and are universally accessible. That existing buildings are upgraded for high energy and water efficiency, net zero emissions, and renewable energy production, and that innovation in building, energy, water, and materials performance is encouraged, provided that it continues to meet the BC Building Code regulations. In terms of affordable housing, we recognize that partnership approaches need to be in place to deliver and manage non and below market housing. The city would continue to actively support the creation of non-market housing, and that may include through the provision of land or providing incentives to developers to create more below market housing. An objective is that a variety of housing options are permitted and positively integrated into all neighborhoods. And I did talk about that to some degree when talking about the land use designations and the different types of growth, the different kinds of housing forms that would be supported in the different parts of the city. An objective is that there is no net loss of rental housing. That could mean that when redevelopment of rental housing is happening, that we're ensuring that there is an equivalent or increasing number of rental units that are being created. And that development application approval processes are streamlined, transparent, and easy to understand so that people can build that housing, build that supply that we know that we definitely need. In terms of the natural environment, this is another topic that if people do development or are thinking about doing some construction on their own property, whether that be an individual homeowner or a larger developer, we would highly recommend that they look at this chapter. There is information on more specific policies about setbacks from expected setbacks of developing near environmentally sensitive areas and the permitting process involved in that. So I'll leave it there for people who need to consult that information to encourage them to do so. But in terms of objectives on this topic, firstly, that remaining sensitive ecosystems are protected, lost or degraded ones are restored, that the Comox estuary is kept living, and that environmental, Indigenous, subsistence, and recreational values are protected and restored, that Courtenay's air, water, and soil are clean and meet and exceed provincially mandated standards, that the urban forest is healthy and growing towards a 34 to 40% canopy cover target. That number is so specific because we developed an urban forest strategy back in 2019. So we have some data to inform that particular target. An objective is that development practices meet ecosystem health and site adaptive design objectives. And that information and opportunities are in place for the wider community to play an active role in the protection, restoration, and stewardship of the natural environment. We of course recognize that nature knows no boundaries, and there's a lot of land out there that people have under their own control, even maybe a small parcel, but that they can contribute to the overall ecological success of our community. So we'd like to see people doing that more where they have interest and ability to do so. In terms of parks and recreation, objectives are that parkland in the form of natural areas, open spaces, and outdoor recreation is of sufficient amounts, is well connected, equitably distributed, and is of high quality to enhance livability throughout the city. That recreation amenities, services, and programming are expanded and enhanced to support increased health, wellness, and social connections for all residents. That parks, greenways, and streets are better integrated to create a seamless and enjoyable active transportation system. So planning those systems as though they are in fact integrated, because that is how we often experience them when we're walking and biking around. The parks and an objective is that the parks and recreation system exemplifies leadership in reconciliation, climate action, equity, and community being through its service programs and partnerships, and that this is visible and that people can see that leadership and derive ideas and inspiration from that. And that partnerships are in place to achieve parks and recreation objectives that could include programs like Partners in Parks, so that if local residents want to get involved in improving their parks, there is a way to do that. Municipal infrastructure objectives include infrastructure and services are resilient to risks and impacts of climate change, that infrastructure investments are guided by a multiple bottom line decision-making approach. This means that energy efficient, fiscally responsible, equitably distributed, sustainable levels of service that protect public health, safety, and the environment is the integrated objective of infrastructure. That natural and engineered forms of green infrastructure are integrated to manage rainwater resources, protect water and air quality, maintain ecosystem function, provide flood control, and address and adapt to climate impacts. So that's such a lengthy objective because it recognizes that natural and green infrastructure can serve many roles in our community. That's solid waste, potable water, sanitary sewer, and rain and stormwater infrastructure life cycle costs are minimized, and that they are minimized by increasing conservation actions and reducing or delaying the need to develop new infrastructure capacity. And that third-party utility providers such as energy and communication utilities are low carbon and reliable. And objectives for social infrastructure. So these are the places and the services that support people to live healthy, productive lives. It can include things like childcare or healthcare or complex long-term housing care. So a lot of those kinds of social supports. And often these are done in partnership. So this is not an area of traditional municipal authority, and the policies in this section really do acknowledge that. But in terms of objectives, one is that all Courtenay residents experience equitable access to services, that coordinated, inclusionary, and systems-based responses are in place to address evolving complex social issues. We know that those social topics are definitely changing in communities all the time, so we need to be understanding those as they are changing and responding appropriately. That physical spaces are designed with the needs for social connection and accessibility in mind, and that neighborhood and community development-based organizing are leveraged as a source of community capacity and resilience. We certainly know through the pandemic that neighborhoods, that street level, those relationships are really important communities to helping each other out, and the city would like to play a role in supporting more of that so that neighbors can help neighbors in times of stress but also just in times of community building as well. In terms of arts, culture, and heritage, objectives are that residents and visitors know they are in the Comox First Nation territory by the prominent, tangible, and intangible celebration of their culture and heritage. That local art, culture, and heritage, including natural heritage, are showcased throughout all of Courtenay, so that wherever you are, you know of our expressive arts and culture. That Courtenay has a reputation as the regional center for arts and culture, that community cultural and heritage assets are identified, preserved, and celebrated, that identities expressed in the public realm and cultural programming are representative of Courtenay and the region, and that community access to and participation in arts and culture is strong and widespread. For food systems, and this is the first time that City of Courtenay has a food systems chapter in our official community plan, although the Comox Valley Regional Growth Strategy has a food systems chapter. So we're in good company, and this makes sense for the city to include one. So the objectives are all residents have access to affordable, healthy, and local food outlets. That mainly means ones that are close to home, ideally within walking distance, that residents have access to food growing opportunities, whether that be on their own land or on public land, that lands supporting traditional foods are protected and traditional practices are celebrated, that agricultural lands are protected, and I should say continue to be protected, and are compatible with urban uses. That food processing, warehousing, and distribution activities are permitted in urban areas of Courtenay to support that food distribution system and food economy, and that food security actions are regionally coordinated. And in terms of the local economy, the objectives are that business retention, development, and investment are increasingly green, low carbon, climate resilient, and equity responsive, that local economic development opportunities are regionally coordinated. You'll see a lot of emphasis on that need for regional coordination on a lot of these topics, that municipal regulations and services are supportive of economic development with the long-term vision of environmental and social responsibility, and that people are at the heart of local economic development and are able to access adequate supports to participate in the economy. So we of course now see the conversation around economic development evolving to include aspects of affordable housing and childcare as key economic development drivers. Now, the implementation of the OCP will occur through numerous municipal, stakeholder, and individual actions incrementally over the next 10 years and beyond. As a high-level policy instrument, the OCP cannot predict the exact sequencing of actions that are outside of the city's direct control, nor should it provide detailed costing for all actions that will occur over a 10-year timeframe. Many implementation actions will require further investigation, consultation, and resourcing. But here, I'm just going to describe the implementation categories. So one is recognizing that we need to advance progress on the OCP through a wide variety of relationships. We're really going to need to work with a lot of people, or at least consult with people, but actually also work with people, which is important relationships like with Comox First Nation, with developers, very important relationship in the city of Courtenay that we intend to be productive, that the governmental relations are strong. So that would be with our provinces and province and the federal government, that partnerships are nurtured across a wide variety of sectors. There's a lot of community organizing in this community, a lot of agencies. We'd love to work together on stated goals, and of course with the wider community such as yourself. An implementation category is also in the topic of municipal corporate alignment and priority setting. So we need to ensure that we are using the OCP to influence all decisions that the city does. That we need to understand how best we can lower our own greenhouse gas emission footprint as a municipal or corporate entity. That we need to develop performance monitoring metrics to understand how well are we delivering on the outcomes of the OCP? Are we achieving our goals? And the city does intend to work with the regional growth, the Comox Valley Regional District on some of their performance monitoring that they are developing as well. and that we intend for there to be ongoing regular OCP amendment refinements. So the last time that the OCP was updated in Courtenay was 2005. So that is considered a long time to be, 17 years to be updating an OCP. Generally, it's recommended in the legislation every 5 years or so. So we would not recommend a full-scale review every 5 years, unless, of course, our growth is growing so much faster, then that may be appropriate. But that we would want to encourage that we can make tweaks to the OCP over time, so that we can ensure that it is implementing the vision as productively as possible. And then another implementation category is being supportive of visionary development. So we want to make sure that we're continuously supporting development applications, especially in the field of affordable housing, so that we make that process as clear and transparent and painless as possible. That expectations around form and character and protection of the natural environment of agriculture lands are very clear and articulated through a set of guidelines, development permit area guidelines. That is also available on the OCP web page, where you can learn more about those very specific guidelines. And that the community amenities are stated so that to provide rather, I should say, community amenity targets and goals are included in the OCP, so that council knows what types of amenities to negotiate when considering a rezoning application. I'm going to just list here the top 8 implementation priorities as they are currently drafted and included in the OCP. Some of them I kind of touched on, but I'll quickly go over them here. So that corporate OCP implementation, monitoring and reporting, administrative structure and procedure. It's a bit of a kind of the drier behind the scenes kind of staff work, but we definitely need to do that to make sure that OCP influences all that we do. Updating the Municipal Climate Action Plan, developing a reconciliation framework with Indigenous partners, the local area plan for the Harmston area, downtown area civic precinct, identifying roles for the city in the delivery of complex topics such as social infrastructure, local economic development, and food security. So the city knows we want to play a part. We just need to figure out what our very specific identified role is, because of course we have limited scope and jurisdiction and capacity as well. We definitely want to strengthen relationships and partnerships with the school district 71 on topics of mutual interest. There's already a good working relationship, but we think we could do even more. And that would include particularly topics like active transportation to help children walk and bike to school, so that they're getting exercise and they're ready to learn when they sit down at school. But other topics like reconciliation and climate action are very important to the school district as well. And we also have some shared servicing on parkland and topics like that. And other priorities would include updating key land use regulatory tools to reflect the OCP, the zoning bylaw, which I mentioned, our building bylaw, the subdivision and development servicing bylaw, so that informs infrastructure standards, the flood management strategy and flood management bylaw, development cost charges, and an affordable housing policy that provides really clear incentives on what the city is offering, working with to help incentivize affordable housing. And then finally, but certainly not least, is creating development application support systems and tools to assist in navigating land development processes with an emphasis on affordable housing. We recognize, particularly if someone's never done development, that this can be quite a complex and mystifying kind of process during development. So the city would like to improve that customer service orientation as well. So as I near the conclusion of this presentation, I'd like to remind that the OCP is a collective vision and it is a collective action, and that its implementation will be a collective journey. And what we mean by that is that there is a role and need for literally everyone to engage in this plan if it is to deliver on its fullest potential. The OCP provides the framework under which all other Courtenay servicing plans, regulations, bylaws, and budgets must follow. And therefore, there is a very clear role for the City of Courtenay, the mayor and councillors of the day, pictured on the left here, and city staff as the city integrates OCP directions into day-to-day activities. This image in the middle shows how the OCP will be used as a source of ideas for mayor and council to set priorities, inform departmental business plans, plan for annual and 5-year budgets, and report back to the public annually on progress, and then set new priorities. However, there is an equally important role for the wider public to engage with the city to ensure that we continue to hear what is important to you in your daily life, how to bring OCP ideas to life, and how the city can work with you to ensure we all experience a high quality of life with a low carbon footprint for generations to come. So on behalf of the City of Courtenay, I hope you see your interests represented in this plan, and we welcome your feedback on how to make it the best representation of Courtenay it can be. And now I'm on my very last slide. At this point in the presentation, if I've achieved my objective, you might be motivated to learn more about the details of the OCP, and here is what to expect for the next step. So right now we're in that public consultation period. It goes until March 8th. We are also referring out to our legislated statutory agencies, First Nations, so we look forward to hearing from them as well. Then in the spring, we will enter into the bylaw reading process of the OCP. As a bylaw, it has to follow all 4 readings. So a meeting at which first and second reading of the bylaw occurs, and then there would be a separate council meeting at which a public hearing occurs, and then another meeting where the plan could be adopted. I will say, of course, that following the consultation that's going on right now, that we will have to see the range of comments and maybe variety of perspectives represented in those comments. And so the timeline may be impacted based on how much feedback we get from the community and how different that feedback might be from what's proposed in the OCP. So of course, staff have to work with council to evaluate that and present that and let the community know what those changes are being proposed. And then also in spring, I did mention before that the intention is that there would be a zoning bylaw update to permit secondary suites and also to update some parking standards. Then in 2023, we would intend to undertake a more comprehensive update of the zoning bylaw to ensure that it aligns and supports the OCP. And of course, implementation is an ongoing activity which will take place over the next 10 years. So on behalf of the City of Courtenay, I really thank you for taking the time, a whole hour or so, to learn more about the OCP. And we hope that we'll see you at a community event in the future and that you will participate. And I hope you have a great day or morning or evening or whatever that is for you right now. All right, take care. Bye.